So, in English, as it will be our common language tonight, on behalf of FLAD, Luso-American Development Foundation, I would like to thank you all for being here with us tonight for the 14th session of Meet the Author and the first session in 2025. And it would be difficult to restart with a better author than Elizabeth Strout that we are delighted to have here tonight among us. And I must say that we did 13 sessions before this one, and Elizabeth, she has been the champion of booking. As 4 hours after opening the inscription, it was full. And a welcome that I would like to extend to Dr. James Tierney, Elizabeth's husband, and the super Attorney General that we also have the pleasure to have among us tonight. Elizabeth Strout will talk about her work with the journalist and writer Isabel Lucas, who has been collaborating with FLAD by conducting all these conversations with the invited writers. I'd also like the opportunity to thank Alfaguara Penguin Random House Portugal, Clara Capitão e Marta Cunha Serra, for their excellent collaboration and support for this session. Alfaguara, as you may know, has been the publishing house of Elizabeth's books in Portugal. Finally, I would also like to thank the bookshop Indi Cascais for being here again one more time with us. And at the entrance of the room, you will find several books of Elizabeth Strout, both in Portuguese and in English, available to sell. Elizabeth, we knew already Olive Kitteridge as well as Lucy Barton. From your last book, we started to know a little bit about their relation. So, in your own words, tonight, tell us everything. And with this, Isabel and Elizabeth, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. For me, it's really a pleasure being here with Elizabeth. We met each other 9 years ago in New York when I knew Lucy Barton for the first time. But just for a very quick presentation about who is Elizabeth Strout and her work, I start with a kind of memory that I have of a conversation that we had in 2022, in the pandemic, and you say something like, life is an emotion that we have to go through. This is pretty much what the poet Philip Larkin said to a friend, and the sentence echoed in Elizabeth Strout's head. She found in it the meaning of her writing, not just in what those words might say in concrete terms, but the way they say it. A tone, a breath that gives even more meaning to what Strout wants her writing to be, a way of communicating the experience of emotion that is life, telling stories that contain that resonance, that impression of pulse of life. Elizabeth Strout, it's a chronicle of a quiet American life. I don't know if you agree with this. And welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you all so much for being here. It just makes me really happy to see you all. So thank you very, very much. And yes, I do agree with that.
Great. So let's go.
So
let's go and talk. She's a really great characters creator and also ambience creator. She creates characters that we just can't forget after we read it. I mentioned Olive Kitteridge, Lucy Barton, but lots of them, William, Isabel, everywhere, everybody. Lots of them are here in this last book, Tell Me Everything, in Portuguese, Conta-me Tudo, by Alfaguara, with translation of Tânia Ganho. So, Elizabeth, for us to be in the spirit of the book, can you read us a piece of this work?
Oh, okay. I'm going to read you. It's going to take 3 minutes, so you don't have to get nervous, you know. And it's not at the very beginning. It's just a little section. It's chapter 3. It's just a little section at the beginning of chapter 3. Okay. There are many back roads in Maine, meaning narrow, tarred roads with trees reaching overhead from both sides, and the roads themselves are often filled with bumps from the long winters of freezing and then thawing. These roads wind around from one small town to another, and if you are not familiar with them, it is easy enough to get lost. But most of the people who are on these curving back roads know exactly where they are going, and in November there can be a stark beauty as you drive along these places because the trees are bare and the trunks and the branches of these trees stand out against the sky, and if the sun is out it can sink with a sharp display of yellow on the deep blue horizon. It might be fair to say that people who have lived here for years take this beauty internally. It enters them without their fully knowing it. But it is there. It is part of the landscape of their lives. 2 weeks after Lucy visited Olive Kitteridge, this happened. On one of these back roads, a man named Matthew Beach lived with his mother. This was in the town of Shirley Falls. Matthew Beach's mother, Gloria Beach, was 86 years old, and she had been living with her son for 10 years. They lived far down a narrow road with no other houses in sight. This was the house that Matthew had grown up in and had lived in his whole life. One Friday evening, Matthew drove to the grocery store, and when he got back, his mother, Gloria Beach, had disappeared from their home. This was toward the beginning of November, and a small bit of the foliage was still clinging to the trees. Matt had called the police right away, and there had been a search with the state troopers and their very bright flashlights. The woods of mostly pine trees and cedars around the house had been examined in a 5-mile radius, and there was no sight or sign of her. Naturally, this was in the newspapers. Bob Burgess and his twin sister, Susan Olson, had spoken to each other about it on the telephone. "Bitch ball disappearing," Susan said. "I didn't even know she was still alive." Gloria Beach and her family had lived in Shirley Falls for years, and the middle child, a girl named Diana, had been in Bob and Susan's class at school. The newspaper said that Walter Beach, Gloria's husband, had divorced her many years before, and he had been deceased for many years as well. Also in the newspaper, for reasons no one quite understood, were 3 current photographs of the children, all grown up now: Thomas, Diana, and Matthew. Thomas was a psychiatrist in Oregon. His photograph showed a sturdy face and kind eyes, yet sort of cold if you really looked. And Diana lived in Connecticut and had been a high school guidance counselor her whole adult life. In the apparently current photograph, she looked beautiful. People did comment on that. She had been a pretty girl, but now that she was older, she was still attractive. How had that happened? One woman in town suggested that she had had plastic surgery, and Susan Olson, peering at the photograph, realized that was probably it. The photograph of Matt, who had been living with his mother, was disturbing. He looked frightened and unkempt, and his hair was half over his eyes, which were covered by huge black framed glasses. "If he killed her, I don't blame him," Susan said to Bob. Bitchball had worked in the school cafeteria. Everyone had been terrified of her. Everyone. Anyway, the case soon went cold.
So here in Tell Me Everything, we find Lucy Barton with 66 years old, and Olive Kitteridge with 90
at the beginning.
And they are talking. They met each other, and Olive Kitteridge has stories to tell to
Yes.
Lucy Barton. One of the first story, it's a story that I guess crosses all the book. There is a ghost in a marriage. What is that?
Well, the story that Olive tells Lucy is about her mother. Basically, it was when she found a clipping, a newspaper clipping. Anyway, the point is that Lucy and Olive realized that Olive's parents had lived with a ghost in their marriage, which was this fellow that had been very much in love with her mother, and it had never worked out. So they talk about that there was a ghost in the marriage of the mother, and there was a ghost in the marriage of the fellow who had not married her as well. And they sort of talk about how every time something went wrong, they would probably think about the other person, how it would have been lovely to have been married to them, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So the ghost in the marriage is the person who's living with them without the other person knowing.
So it's the principle of the book. But let's talk about these two women, Olive Kitteridge and Lucy Barton.
You know, can I just say something more about the ghost?
Yes, please.
Okay, so one of the reasons that I like to write, that I need to write, is because I want to get into somebody else's head stuff that they might know or recognize about themselves, or maybe even learn something about somebody else, which would be great as well. But the whole ghost in a marriage, my whole theory has been that there are things that people don't tell other people. Even your best friends, there's some things that we just don't tell anybody. And we might not even be fully aware of what it is we're not telling, but we just don't verbalize it to anybody else. And therefore, we live with a little bit of loneliness that comes and goes according to whatever else is going on in our life. But the ghost in a marriage is that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think that Olive's mother ever mentioned that to anybody, and probably the fellow never mentioned it to anybody as well. So, but it was there in their heads. Yeah, they were living with these ghosts. So that's a little bit of the kickoff of this book, is like, how many things do we not tell when we're, say, tell me everything? How many things do we not tell, and how many things can I tell you, my readers, so that you will realize, oh, phew, I've had that thought. I'm not alone in thinking that.
Mm-hmm. That's a kind of, it's everybody can recognize that ghost in the...
In one way or another. I mean, hopefully we don't all have ghosts in our marriage, but the point is, but we have some sort of ghost somewhere in our heads or something. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yes, but we all listen to the conversation of those women, and
okay, enough
and
about the ghost.
That conversation, we know almost all with the conversation. This is, you construct your novels with this kind of structure. Is dialogues, conversations, not many descriptions, and we know almost everything about people by doing this kind of dialogues.
Right.
Not only with people, with the characters, but also with the other books. The books talk to other books.
Right.
What was the first idea when you start to write this kind of, collection, series?
Well, I never intended to write, I think, what are they calling this, a universe? I never intended that. I never thought I would ever... Okay, so I wrote Olive Kitteridge. I never thought I would write about her again. I wrote Amy and Isabel years earlier. Never thought about Isabel until... she appeared. But, so I wrote Olive Kitteridge, and then she showed up again about 7 years later, 10, I don't know. So I had to write her again, because she showed up, and when Olive shows up,
tell us that first moment when Olive appeared to you.
The first time Olive appeared, I was unloading or loading the dishwasher. It had something to do with the dishwasher. And I really felt a presence behind my back. I mean, I could
a spiritual presence?
No, I just understood there was like something going on behind me. In like there was a large woman that I could picture, and she was standing by a picnic table, and in her head she was saying, "It's high time everyone went home." And I thought, oh, I've got to get that down. So I wrote that down, and that was Olive, and that was the beginning of Olive, and that was the story where she ends up stealing her new daughter-in-law's brassiere and one shoe and marking her sweater. So that was the first Olive story. And then, anyway, so the Olive book was done, finished, and then a number of years later, I was sitting in Oslo and in a cafe, and she just showed up. Like, I could see her. This time I could visually see her in front of me getting out of the car with her cane at this point in her life. And I thought, oh, man. Oh. And so I sketched out that story, whatever. And then I realized, oh, Olive, here we go again. So I had to write Olive again. So I did. But then when I wrote Lucy Barton, I thought, that's it, all done with Lucy. And then Laura Linney played Lucy Barton in a one-woman show in London and also on Broadway. And during a rehearsal, Laura Linney said something about William, because in My Name is Lucy Barton, Lucy very much says to the reader, I'm not going to discuss my marriage. And yet we know that her husband was called William, and we knew a few things about him. And Laura Linney said something about William, I'm not even sure what it was, but all of a sudden right above her head I saw the words, oh, William. And I realized, oh, let's have a book about him. So then I did, and I thought, well, it'll have to be from Lucy's point of view. So I had started it from never mind. So I wrote another book about Lucy and her ex-husband, William, just because of something that Laura Linney said. I don't even remember what it was.
But the way that you construct those characters, because they are very vivid.
Yeah.
We can recognize any of them about the tone, the words they use, the witty they have, something like that. How is your process as a writer to construct that kind of strong characters?
You know, it's a concentration. I concentrate. Like everything else disappears. I just really think about them so deeply.
Olive lives with you.
Excuse me?
Olive lives with you?
Oh, yeah. Not as much, because, she's been put back in a book.
But that idea of they are constructed with dialogues. We know almost of them by dialogues.
Right. Especially Lucy Barton, because that's the first person. It's the first person narrator, which was very risky and scary for me to do, but never mind, I did it. But I just think about them, and when they come to me that vividly, then I know that they're there to be written about. So I have to deal with them. If they don't show up that vividly, then they end up on the floor. It's like, okay.
Okay. And then you put Olive Kitteridge in this last novel, and Lucy Barton in Crosby. It's a place that it's a fictional place.
Right, because I realized, I just really was walking around one day and I realized, wait a minute, they're all living here now. They're living in the same area now. And I don't know why it hadn't occurred to me, because, Lucy went up to Maine with her ex-husband to get, avoid the pandemic. And Bob Burgess has been living there for a long time, which we found out in Olive again, a little chapter about him. And I thought, wait a minute, Lucy and Olive are in the same town. Let's get them together. So, and then because I just love Bob Burgess so much, I thought I'll make him, like the spine of the book.
And the fact that it's a small place, to what extent the towns like Crosby could concentrate all the essential things to write about global themes?
Yeah, I didn't know they were global themes. But
trauma, marriage.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I'll tell you this story about Olive Kitteridge, because you're all here and you don't live in America. Say, but anyway, which is amazing, because you're here because I wrote this thing, and it's so moving to me. But when I first wrote that story I was telling you about, where she steals her daughter-in-law's brassiere and steals one shoe, when I first went out on the road with that book, I went to Italy, and then even in America, there were so many women who would lean into me at the signing line and say really confidentially, how did you know? You must have a daughter-in-law. And I don't. I just have a son-in-law. I don't have a daughter-in-law at all, but I began to understand there's a lot of women out there that would like to steal their daughter-in-law's brassiere and one shoe. And that was really interesting to me, because I just thought this was Olive Kitteridge up in Maine, and yet something is going on.
Yes, it's the universal in global and in local.
Right.
Yes, that create a place. It's like create a character.
Well, yeah. Yes, I guess it is. Right. The place. I've always thought that literature is place, and time in history is important. I mean, everybody is born in a certain time in history, and everybody is born in a certain place. And if you combine the place and the time in history and you drop a character in, then you can have a story. But we need to place, I need to position the reader. I need to position you people so that you know what these people are living through. They see these trees, they see this, they see that, because it broadens your understanding of them. So.
And the connection between characters and the landscape, it's very crucial here in the
Yes,
book.
yeah.
How do you play with that? Because you start the chapters mainly with the landscape descriptions, and then
Right.
they came.
I noticed that.
You noticed?
No, I did notice. I didn't mean to, but I
It
noticed.
wasn't, oh, okay.
But I did
It
notice
wasn't
I did
intentional?
that. No, it wasn't intentional. I mean, I don't do much that's intentional. I just do it and then hope for the best.
Or is it a day type to you as a writer?
What?
A day type. Describe us what is.
Oh, a typical day. Yeah.
typical.
Okay. Well, I don't write from beginning to end. I never have, even a story. And years ago, I learned to write in scenes. Back when I only had a very small amount of time each week to write, I learned to write a scene that had whatever emotion that I was feeling the most at the time, I would transpose into a character. And that character would then walk around with whatever was really bothering me, only not the same factual situation, but the emotion of what it was. And that way I would think of the scene as having a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. And if it had a heartbeat, it stayed on the table. If it did not have a heartbeat, it went on the floor. And then I began to realize that eventually these scenes would connect. And then came the point where I had to decide, okay, well, how am I going to begin this? And then I would have to figure out the beginning and pull it through and then figure out how it was going to end.
Mm-hmm. Because it could be, I guess it should be a very complex process when you have, in this book, all this net of characters. And,
right.
And how do you make not to lose yourself in the stories they are telling each other and the lives they are living together and the names and everything. And how do you connect all of this without losing yourself?
Oh, I do lose myself.
Okay, so...
Thank goodness.
And how do you,
so
how do you find yourself?
Oh, to lose myself in my work. It's just like, oh, I'm gone. Thank you. But then, you know, I put the work down and I'm back. But
you draw something?
No, it's all in my head. It's all in my head.
When I met you in that apartment in New York, you were surrounded by papers, reviewing a book. It's usual for you to do that.
Yeah, I'm a very messy worker. I'm actually a messy person, but never mind. But I'm a messy worker, and yet I mean I know writers that are very organized, and it really scares me when I go into what they call their studies. I get so scared because it's like so pristine and organized, and I'm like, how could you possibly work here? But they do. But I can only work if I'm like, if I look gross, I feel gross, you know, and there's papers everywhere. That's how I can work, and that's how I do work. Okay. So thank goodness for the people who have put up with me.
I understand you. Another thing here, it's and it's another theme that it's very important. This book is a post-pandemic book. And it talks a lot about our present time, and you write a lot in the moment. In a moment, it takes to a kind of risk that you.
Right.
What are the main risks of writing so close to the time that you
The main risk for me is the political situation in our country, and that has been a risk from way back. I mean, I received a few pieces of hate mail when Olive Kitteridge didn't like George W. Bush. People were very upset with me about that. And so I realized, okay. So that was the beginning, but I didn't pay too much attention to that. But then as things in our country accelerated and the division became so much more, I realized I want to write a book for everybody, but I maybe can't. But I don't want to add to the polarization, but I don't want to be dishonest with my characters either. So that's actually becoming difficult.
So the criticism, social criticism, political criticism, it's all there, moral criticism, and it takes us to the Puritans. There is a part in the book, in the beginning of the book, that I don't know if it's Olive, I don't remember exactly, but they are talking about generations of Puritans that came to that part of America and resist without all the morality.
Right. Which is actually how I was raised. I mean,
you came from generations of...
I came from generations of Puritan people in Maine. Oh.
Tell us a little, what is that?
It was just very difficult. I mean, no television because, why would you do that? Only vulgar people would watch TV.
Okay.
So there was no television. There were books, no newspapers or anything like that. And just a sense, like, the whole point is two things. You never call attention to yourself, no matter what, ever, ever, ever. And there's a writer, John Cheever, in America, and I've always adored John Cheever. And I came across a letter where his mother wrote to him, and she said, "Johnny, why haven't you been telling me all about these prizes you've been winning?" By the way, he's from New England, that's the point. And then she said, "Johnny, why haven't you been telling me about these prizes you've been winning?" And he wrote back and he said, "I was afraid you would think I was bragging." And I thought, oh, that's why I love him so much. Because, people would say to my mother, "Aren't you proud of Elizabeth?" And she'd say, "No." And she, why would she? So it's like you don't call attention to yourself ever, 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 ever. That's the worst thing you can do. And then the second worst thing you can do is be vulgar, which is almost do anything. And it's very tiring to be brought up that way. So I went to New York and lived in New York for many, many years, and I loved it.
And you made that comparison in many of your books. That is what means to be from Maine and what means to be from New York. What are the main differences of this?
Well,
it was a shock for you when you...
I couldn't believe it. I just about died when I just about died when I moved to New York, because people will talk about anything. I couldn't believe what people would talk about. And they would talk about it in a restaurant. They'd be having, dinner, and they'd be talking about this, and it would be just like, I cannot believe those words just came out of your mouth, but they did. And it was fascinating. I just had no idea that people did that. It was very freeing.
And that exclamation that you have, that you are telling us, it's a kind of the exclamations that you put in the dialogues with, we are always being, wow, it's not an exclamation point, but it's a surprising always.
Yeah, I was
being surprised with
it was amazing. Yeah, and then, and then when I first moved to New York, after a number of years, I actually went to a therapist, which was like so embarrassing for me because I thought, oh my God, I can't believe it. And I didn't tell anybody. But the point is, I sat down one day and there were this young woman talking next to me, and she said, "Oh, I had such a breakthrough in therapy today." And I thought, are you actually going to tell us about it? She did. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even dare tell anybody I was in therapy. And she's just like blabbing away about her huge breakthrough in therapy. It was amazing. Just amazing.
Do you take notes with this kind of...
no, but I just remember it.
Okay.
I was young.
So that kind of of laughing and irony that you have, it's they are in your characters, and you use it to write.
Yeah.
You amuse yourself while you were writing, or it's...
I don't laugh when I'm writing. No.
But you amuse yourself. It's funny.
It is funny.
It is funny being Olive Kitteridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's so mean.
I know. It was actually fun to open the drawer and see the brassieres and think, oh, she's not gonna like that. So she takes them.
But when you get to the end of a book and decide, as you have decided many times, this is it, Olive Kitteridge is dead as a character.
She's not dead. I will never kill her.
Okay.
She's never going to die on my watch, ever.
This is in first hand, I guess so, because
what?
You are telling this in first hand, or it's the first time that you are saying that? Because
no, I've said that before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. now I feel embarrassed, but
But now she's 19, 90.
Yeah, she's 91 or something by the end of the book, but she can just sit there and be 91.
Okay.
Fine.
And she's still telling stories.
Yeah.
And the thing that interests me now, it's the role of stories in literature and in your literature in
Right.
particular. How do you deal with this? What is so amazing or so fantastic in telling stories? Not the way the stories are being telling, blah blah blah, but finding the way to make
Right.
that.
The way a story is told is the story. You know, we listen to something and we think, oh, that's a story about a really interesting person, but it's not. It's whoever's telling you the story is making that person interesting, or you wouldn't be listening. So the telling of this story is essential to how the story will be received. And when I had Olive and Lucy telling each other stories, I had to very quickly go between their different dialogues because they have very different way of speaking. And dialogue on the page is an interesting thing because it will reveal a character, the way they speak, but also it's never the way we really speak in real life. So you have to learn how to adjust it.
How did you learn to write dialogues as you do?
Just practice.
Yes, and reading
For like 40 years.
And reading.
Seriously.
I'm sorry.
Like I practiced for, well, I mean, actually more than that. But I mean, let's say I started to write when I was about 4 or 5.
Yes.
And then I got published when I was 43, I think. So it was like 40 years of practicing.
Yes, and reading, writers.
And reading is essential, yeah.
What were the most influential writers for
You know, just recently I picked up J.D. I picked up Catcher in the Rye and another book of his, and I realized he does dialogue really well. Salinger. Dialogue with him is very, very, very good.
You say almost everything in dialogues. You, as a writer.
Well, in this book,
In
yeah.
this book, yes.
Yeah, a lot of, well, but there's the scenery.
Take us. Let's go to the present time again. And again, I'm sorry, talking about America and
I'm
that
sorry
kind of
about
diaspora,
America.
because these characters, they came from many parts of America. Lucy
Yeah.
Barton came from the Midwest, and they are always in this kind of crossing diaspora in US. When you were writing this, I guess we are also thought about what's happening now in US in this
Right.
diaspora. What are your concerns as a writer, if you have concerns as someone that is
Right.
very present in reading and interpreting?
Right. My concerns as a writer are, well, they are increasingly what they started when people were mad at me for writing Olive Kitteridge not liking George W. Bush. That was the beginning of it, and that has increased dramatically. And so my problem as a writer is, how am I going to write honestly about the characters that I want to write about and not get a death threat? Because they're flying around the United States. Death threats are like everywhere these days. I mean, but it goes through my mind. Like, okay, well, I don't know how to write right now. I don't know how to do this with these characters, especially with everything that's happening right now. And we don't have a clue what's going to happen a year from now or 2 years from now. So partly I have to wait and see what will happen, you know. But it's a problem. Am I making sense?
Yes. I don't know if I'm making anything unconfidential, but you told me upstairs that now you are reading a biography of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
why?
biography about Walter Isaacson wrote a biography about him.
Yes, I have
Yeah.
that biography. I didn't start the biography
Yeah.
because I'm not in the mood. But
Yeah.
why are you so interested in reading that biography?
Well, because, you know, he's the character on the stage of America right now. He's like the main character, basically. And so I started reading it, and it's first of all, it's very well written, and it starts with him, from a youngster all the way up through, and it's very interesting to realize that in many ways it's not that he was different; he was always peculiar, but he had different leanings. He had different political leanings, and then to watch them change and become very, very right wing is fascinating and sort of horrible, but it's just. I kind of can't put it down, except I have to. It's getting closer and closer to his flipping out. Really, as a big right winger, I can't read it as long. I have to put it down every few chapters and take a break. But I'll finish it. I'm dying to finish it. It's very, very interesting to realize.
It could be a fictional character.
I could never write a fictional character like he is. It wouldn't occur to me. It wouldn't occur to me that you could even be like that. I mean, he goes through these phases of, it doesn't matter, you can read the book or not. But the point is, I could not have made up that character.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's go to your characters, Olive Kitteridge and Lucy Barton. They are
So
talking.
tame, but
Yeah, they are talking a lot about lives that never been registered.
Right.
And what I guess it's an interest of you also, writing about these ordinary lives or kind of ordinary lives that we all can recognize, each of us in their laughs, their traumas, their guilt, their sense of guilt. That what is this interest? That what is?
Well, first of all, I've always been interested in people, and I still am. I don't think there's anything, for me, there's nothing more interesting on this earth than people. Just fascinating. And that means anybody walking down the sidewalk is like, I am so interested in you, And I just watch them, and I think, I wonder what's in their head. I wonder what they think about when they wake up at night. I wonder what they're not telling their partner or their best friend or their psychiatrist, what they're not telling their psychiatrist. That's really what I'm interested in, It's like, what is really, really in there, you guys? Deep, deep, deep. So I am really, really interested in people and in all people. And it wasn't until I had written that phrase, unrecorded lives, when Lucy and Olive were talking, and Lucy says something about all these unrecorded lives, that I realized, yeah, like all of our lives, most of our lives, unless you're Elon Musk, are unrecorded. We just live them and then we die and that's that. But that's so interesting to me because not only do we have all these thoughts inside our head, but nobody will ever know. Amazing.
Yeah.
I just find it amazing, that's all.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, that's all I have to say about it.
So that
It's just interesting to me, and therefore I hope to you.
and the details, you are very attentive to psychological details.
Yeah.
Your books and this book in particular are full of that. What are as a writer, when we are in a cafe, in a restaurant, in a street, or when we are giving autographs, what are you trying to capture to your characters? That kind of psychological
I just want to get
things.
something that's truthful, just something truthful that I can get from my head to your head, that I've observed or felt, or something that I think, well, that's actually true. That's a true sensation, as opposed to something that somebody's making up or something like that. So I'm just trying to get a truthful thought to your head from my head so that you can do with it whatever you want to, whatever. That's what I'm trying to do. And so, and I'm just going back to what I said before. I just think people are so endlessly interesting in every single way.
One person in a small place, as the place where you grew up in Maine. You are on a child?
No, I have an older brother.
Okay, but you grew up very isolated, as you said.
Yeah.
That
He didn't really like to play with me very much.
No? Why?
I don't know.
You're a
I don't
girl
really
and-
know. I remember we used to play a little bit in the woods together, but not very long.
So the reading, I'm trying to get to that moment.
Oh,
of,
to the
of
reading.
You as a reader.
Oh, right. So I read.
So you read a lot as
I read and read and read. There was nothing else to do. So I did. I read.
examples of names and books that you read that made you want to be a writer. I don't know.
And I can remember when I was very young, I remember reading a book and I remember thinking, oh, I've had that thought. I have no idea what the book was. But I remember that feeling of understanding that a book was the only time that I would ever be able to figure out what it was like to be in somebody else's head. And that's about the same time that I figured out I'll never know what it's like to be in somebody else's head. Neither will you. I mean, none of us will. Isn't that amazing? I find that amazing. I'm sorry. But we are just only going to see things through our own eyes while we're here on Earth. And not really know. I mean, like, how do I know? That looks like a peach-colored sweater to me. Is it the same peach that you're looking at when you look at? I mean, we just don't even know in the most basic way. So, but when we read a book, we can get inside somebody else's head. And when I recognized that, I was so excited. And that's what I want to do for readers.
And when you create someone like Olive Kitteridge, that is someone that is very, I guess, mean and... But she's also empathic.
She's complicated. We're all complicated. I mean, I think we're all complicated. I don't know because I'm not anybody else, but I think we're pretty complicated. Mm-hmm. Most of us, we're all good and bad and everything in between. We just are. And so I'm just here to try and record that.
Mm-hmm. And when you are writing or when you are talking to this kind of people that read you, that are reading you, that came to you to hear you talk about your work, you have been there in that places, hearing some...
Oh, yes.
How was that?
Well, I just want to say...
What interests you more when you were in that side?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I didn't, as you know, I didn't get published until I was like 42 or 43, I can't even remember, but I was not... a child. But I would go, when I lived in New York, I would go because there would be writers that I loved and they would come and they would give readings and I would be so excited and even scared, just sitting in the audience. I'd be scared just because anyway, I was. And so when they asked if there were questions, I always had a question, but I never asked it. I never asked it because I thought, should I ask that? And I thought, no, that's stupid. Don't ask that. That would be stupid. And it wasn't, like I look back at the question and I think, I could have asked that. That wasn't such a stupid question. But I never did. So anyway, when we come to the chance for you to ask me something, please don't worry about it being stupid. Because there are no stupid questions for a writer.
But
Just saying.
What interests you more in that times? It's the process of writing that you are trying to discover something else about the writer that you admire?
Oh, what interested me in going to see them?
Yes.
I was just starstruck. They were like my idols. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh.
And now you are in that position as an idol.
Yeah, but see, my parents did such a good job with the puritanical thing. I don't have a sense of myself sitting even up here. I don't even know if I'm existing because there was like, they're like, do not ever call attention to yourself. So, and it worked, so I know that I'm here and I appreciate everybody coming here, but I don't have a sense of myself as being...
So you don't take yourself seriously as a writer?
I take myself very seriously.
As a writer?
Very, very seriously as a writer. As a successful author, no.
What is the difference for you?
Oh, because when I'm writing, I'm just as serious as I couldn't be more serious about trying to get this to you people for you to read in a way that you can absorb it on every single level. The sound of it, the style of it, everything I'm trying to do that. And that is very, very serious. But the success, apparently I've had success, but that's hard for me to understand because of that New England thing.
Mm-hmm. That New England thing, it's a trauma?
I think so. But as the traumas go, not so bad.
And here we have traumas, lots of traumas in the book.
Yeah, there are a lot of traumas in the book.
Problems with getting older, problems with betrayals, problems with what it means to be an American today. Lots of these questions that are also global questions, because what happens in
Yeah.
America don't stay
No,
in
I
America.
know that. I understand that. It's horrifying, yeah.
Can
Right.
you develop that? Or
What?
can you develop the idea? Or
Oh, the idea of being an American? No, I'm not going to develop that idea. I don't need to. I mean, or I don't care to. I told you I wouldn't. I told you if there wasn't something I would talk about, I was going to. Anyway,
please.
no, but in the book, yeah, there are. I mean, look, no. I mean, in my view, what I'm trying to do for my reader, I'm not trying to present happy people, because I think that just a story about happy people is like uninteresting. You know, Eugene O'Neill wrote one play about a happy family. I think it was called Ah Wilderness. I think it lasted about 3 days on Broadway. Nobody cared. It's like, okay, so you're a happy family. Yawn, you know, please. But I am interested. I'm not trying to go into the depth. I'm just saying we all have issues. We all have problems. We all have known sorrows. So let's just look at those so that we don't have to feel so alone with them all the time. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are traumas in there, and there are betrayal. There are, you know, many different things, but there are, what I hope for is to always show, and Bob Burgess is the person who does this the most, is to show those, what I think of as moments of grace, where somebody is all of a sudden able to receive love or give it, even if it's imperfect. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm interested in showing the reader.
Mm-hmm. There is an idea that resonates in me. It's something that Olive Kitteridge says, that is a thing that is the roots of evil are mostly in fear. Fear.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. Olive said that?
Yeah. She's a clever one. She's a clever one.
Oh, well. No wonder people write me hate mail. Oops. No, I do think that fear is a terrible thing. That many bad things can come out of fear. But what can you do? You can't stop being afraid.
Yes, and we read this while we laugh and while we are getting pleasure with your books, as you are saying something very, very simple. But that's I don't know if it's one of the keys of your success, and you are very transversal as a writer. You are upstairs. She told me that mostly women would be here. No, we have some men here, I guess. So
they kind of look like they have to be. But.
And now we are open the questions to the audience, I guess, because I have lots of questions here, but we are here to make questions to Elizabeth, please.
Yeah. You know, that sin eater stuff, I think I must have somehow heard about that as a very young child, because that came to me as I was writing about Bob, and I thought, where did that come from? And I must have been reading, or somebody might have been reading to me, something about a fable or something about a sin eater, because I have a memory of a man who is getting more and more bent over every page because he's eating people's sins. And that was fascinating to me when I remembered it, like many, many, many years later. And I thought, let's use that. Because Bob, I think, is a sin eater. He doesn't even know it, you know. He's clueless about himself. But he does take on people's problems. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
It's good hearing you. I have two questions for you, if I may.
Yeah.
The first one is, of your books, which one is your favorite? That's the first question. The second question is, in historical fiction, when you are doing historical fiction, characters show up. And sometimes you don't like them, but they have to become somehow major characters. How do you deal with a character that you like less. And in this case, in my case, is an Ottoman princess that I have to deal with, and I like her less than I would like to. So how do I deal with that?
You know, let me take that last question first, and then you're going to have to remind me of the first one after I finish this. But I think, was I telling you this about Olive Kitteridge? Okay, so when I was writing Olive Kitteridge the first time, and after that scene that I've described now many times, I really thought about it. I mean, it was fun to write about it, but I remember that night thinking, she is too much. She is just too much to take. I cannot do this. And then I remember literally walking over to the window and looking out, and I remember thinking to myself, let her be Olive. And so I had to, and I've never forgotten that moment. Because when I write about somebody like Jim Burgess, for example, very unpleasant people, I mean, doing very unpleasant things, I have to let them be who they are. And that's what I learned that night that I was worried about Olive. I just have to let them be who they are, and the readers can maneuver their way around them or close the book or do what they need to do. But I have to, as their creator, let them be who they are. So that's the way I deal with that. Now, what was your, my favorite book? You know, I can't do it, sorry. I'm so sorry. It's just so unfair to all the others. Yeah, thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Upstairs.
Hi. Well, I just read your book, your last book, and when I finished it, I was wondering, what's Elizabeth Strout writing next? Because it feels like she wrapped up all her work with this book.
Yeah.
So that's my first question.
Okay.
If you have any plans.
Yeah.
And my second question is, as a small-town bookseller, I'm asking, I would love to have one of your characters like a small-town bookseller. Is there any chance?
Oh, that's a thought. That really is a thought. Thank you. How interesting. Huh. Thank you for that, actually. I do feel that I'm done with these people now. I mean, I know I've said that before, but I really do feel like I'm done. And I am working on something that's brand new, whole different set of characters, whole different setting. So that's what I'm doing. But interesting about this bookseller. Huh. Thank you.
One more question over there.
Oh. Hello. As a writer yourself, I don't know if this is on.
Yeah. Yeah, stick it in front of your face.
As a writer yourself, how does your process differ or is the same as Lucy's?
Oh, well, that, I don't think Lucy writes in scenes. I don't have the feeling that she writes in scenes. I have the feeling, my sense is that Lucy just writes what's coming out of her head. Because what Lucy supposedly has written novels, but we don't see them. We see 3 memoirs. So I've written faux memoirs. So I think that Lucy writes different. I think she writes from beginning to end, or as she's experiencing something. I think she writes it that way. That's my sense of how she writes those memoirs. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm the sort of person, like you said, when I'm sitting in the audience, I generally do not ask questions.
Oh,
but
please.
You said something that I find really important. You say, on the one hand, that when characters come to you, you really have to give them voice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you mentioned something which I think is crucial that we think about, which is censorship, your own censorship.
Right.
Because if Olive comes to you, or Lucy Barton, and they come from a place where they have very strong opinions, political opinions,
Right.
will you write them down, or will you censor yourself? Because this is the moment where we're at.
Exactly.
Like you said, everything we write is so public
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about your scale because you're an international
I know.
name, but everything you write, you can have people criticizing you on Facebook, everywhere.
Precisely.
Where is art? Where does it stand now? How can we actually create?
You know, exactly. And that's a very, very good question. And I have been thinking about it as I've been traveling around Spain and now Portugal. Yay. So excited to be here for a few weeks. And I've actually been thinking about this more and more as I keep watching what's happening in America and the whole world. And I've decided that I'm not going to censor my characters. I'm not going to. So thank you. Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, there's no point in my writing. I would just stop. No. So I can't. So I have to just let them be who they are. But good question.
One more.
Hello, I'm a man. Sorry.
Oh, hi. Fabulous. Yay.
Okay, I love your books. I have one question for you. What was your opinion about the adaptation of Olive Kitteridge for TV, for the TV series? In my case, I first saw the series and then I read all your books. Okay? Thank you for being in Portugal.
Oh,
Okay?
that's really interesting. That's very interesting. Thank you for telling me that. So you read all the books after saying, okay, that's
Yes,
good.
yes.
It's true, I
So-
know him. It's true.
Okay. Well, then it's a great series. I love it.
Okay, I love it also, yes.
No, actually, I was very pleased with it. I was very, very pleased with all the acting, and I thought Frances did a wonderful job, and Richard Jenkins was great.
And Frances McDormand is something special.
She's very,
I
very
think
special.
she's Oliver Kitteridge.
Right, right. She didn't look to me like my Olive because she's too pretty to be my Olive.
Okay.
But I thought she was amazing. I thought the whole thing was wonderful, and I was so relieved. Oh,
Okay, thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Let me
Yeah.
just tell you that this gentleman that I know has been here since 4 o'clock this afternoon, and he said I couldn't do the inscription. There was no place, no vague place, so I'm just sitting here, and I wouldn't leave until you let me go in, and we did.
Oh, that's so lovely.
That's true. We passed by him.
That's killing me. Oh, that's getting through my New England business here. That's actually reaching me. Thank you.
No more questions?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What do we do with social media these days? How do we handle social media, we who have to be there in some ways for marketing? What do we do? It's a moral issue, basically.
It is a very moral issue.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I do not know. The truth is that maybe I shouldn't say this. Should I say this? I'm asking my husband. I have somebody who handles my social media. And so I'm not aware of it. Just in case.
Lucky you, because it's a big problem.
It is a big problem. And it has occurred to me recently to ask her, she's a very lovely person, and it has occurred to me to ask her, have I been receiving, and then I thought, no, I don't need to know.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to ask her. And if there's anything she needs to tell me, she'll tell me.
Yeah.
But that's how I deal with it. But honestly, I do not know how the world can deal with this because it's just become so big and so many different platforms out there and so many different. I really don't know. But you're absolutely right. It's a huge moral question, and I don't have the answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, but thank you. It's a very,
One more question?
very great question.
Yes.
Easy, lighter question. What do you think of Portugal so far?
I love it.
And
Oh, yeah.
are there places here, things you've seen that remind you of home, of New England?
Well, I just got here a few hours ago, but But I really love it. I said to my husband as the plane was coming in, I said, "Oh, I love this place." And I don't usually say that. I mean, you know, but I love this place. And I took just a little tiny walk around the house. I mean, but I love it. And the light here is so beautiful. There's this soft, amazing light. I'm very, very happy to be in Portugal. Very happy to be here. So thank you. There was something else. What did you ask? If there's a special place?
No, if there's anything that reminds you of home.
Oh, if it reminds me of home. You know, I heard a seagull. I'm serious. I heard a seagull outside, and I was like, oh, how fun. Because the landscape was not home, was not Maine, which for me is wonderful, because it was like a different landscape. But then there was a seagull, and I thought, oh, that feels cozy. Do you know what I mean? So thank you. Thank you so much. Good.
More questions? Now, Elizabeth Strout, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you all so, so much.
Sign books over there. It's just